So welcome to the second act. If this were an orchestra concert, you would be done with the crazy experimental new music, and this would be the Beethoven symphony that you paid good money to hear. I'm really excited to talk to you about two things that I love, one of them being math and the other being technology. And I want to talk about and think about a couple things. I want to see how these two objects are related. I want to talk a little bit about historically how they have been related, and also about the future and about possibilities, how we as teachers might relate them, both for ourselves and for our students. So this is my mom. She works for a nonprofit youth choir as an office administrator, and over the years, much to her chagrin, she's been asked more and more to use computers in her work. And so this facilitates certain interactions between the two of us. So I might say, hey, do you have a minute to talk about Christmas schedule so we can buy plane tickets? Sure, give me 15 to 20. I have to finish tallying last week's attendance. Don't you keep that in a spreadsheet? Yeah, it's really nice. Why does it take you that long to tally? I have to count each person each week. Why don't you have the spreadsheet tally? You can do that? Clearly, there are many possibilities that we gain by using technology, things that technology is very good at. But we also get something like this. So she might text me and say, I'm creating a master email list, and some people are complaining that they're getting duplicate emails. Well, did you remove the duplicates? You have to alphabetize and look for duplicates. Why doesn't it know to do that when I copy-paste? It's a computer. It can only do what you tell it to do. And I bring this up to make a point, that technology has a ton of capabilities. There are things that it's very good at doing, and of course it has some limitations, things that it's not so good at doing. And I bring it up not just to poke a little bit of fun at my mom. It's a cheap joke. But also, thinking about possibilities and limitations I've found to be really helpful as I've developed as a teacher, particularly in one instance a few years ago where I taught a lesson that I thought would be great, and it fell flat. So it was a construction lesson, and here's a task. Construct an isosceles triangle. I get this. All right. How do you know that you've constructed an isosceles triangle? Well, both sides are 6 centimeters, not unreasonable. How do you know that? I measured. What did you measure with? My ruler. And I got pretty angry because, as we know, that's not something you're allowed to do with a compass and straightedge. You cannot use the marks on the ruler as a measuring device. That's a misunderstanding of this technology. And of course, you get something like this, where my only response can be, what is this? It's a triangle. Withhold judgment for a moment. Okay, is it isosceles? And anyone who's actually taught a straight edge and compass lesson knows that things only get worse with circles and compasses. How do you know that line is tangent? It touches at just one point. Good. How do you know where that point was? It just made it work. We're somehow missing the point. So, an unintentional joke. So I realized something through this lesson. What I realized is that they were asking similar questions to the questions that my mom was asking me about her fancy newfangled computer. They were asking questions about the possibilities and limitations of this technology. And I thought, well, if I can teach my mom to use a computer, I can certainly teach these children, these bright children, to use ancient technology. So I made a list, and I was going to tell them, here are the things that you can do, and here are the things that you can't do. And what can you do with the straight edge, and what can you do with the compass, and what are the rules? What things can't you do? And as I was making this, I noticed that I was making a list that, in fact, already existed, although it's not very good in its original format. here's a translation. What I had inadvertently made was, in fact, a list which lined up almost perfectly with the 5 postulates from Euclid's Elements, the 5 basic assumptions that Euclid had from which he developed an entire axiomatic system of geometry. And let's look at some of them. So 1, let it have been postulated to draw a straight line from any point to any point. What is this saying? This is telling us the possibility of the straight edge to do that. And to produce a finite straight line continuously in a straight line. So this is telling us again about what a straight edge can do. It can extend a line indefinitely. So you don't have to start over if you draw your first line too short. And to draw a circle with any center and radius, this is telling us how to use the compass to make a circle. And so this was amazing. I didn't need to make a list. It had been made, and it was there for me. And it was placed exactly where, in fact, you'd expect it to be placed at the beginning. Good place to look for instructions. And if you don't believe me that these are, in fact, about instructions of using technology, let's look at the verbs. Postulate 1, to draw. Postulate 2, to produce. And to draw. So 2 things shocked me. 1, I didn't have to make a set of instructions for my students. They'd already been made, and they were very good. But the second is that these postulates, which up until this point I had been thinking about as basic relationships between ethereal, abstract, non-touchable mathematical objects of points and lines, wasn't that at all. It was instructions. It was telling us what we could and couldn't do. And if you still don't believe me, let's take a quick look at the famous 5th postulate. Now, this is very intuitive to all of us, right? This is something that makes total sense. I don't even want to read it all. What he's saying is you take those 2 angles, and if you add them and it's less than 180, that's the side where the point intersects. So maybe we could make this a little better. Mathematicians did in the years to come, and they replaced it with the parallel postulate, which has the same results. Given a line and a point not on the line, there's at most one line through that point, parallel to the given line. And so what frustrated Euclid and other mathematicians is that this one stood out as being weird. He was perfectly fine taking as axiomatic these most basic things that we could do with the best technology of his time, the compass and the straight edge. But he wasn't satisfied with the 5th postulate. So is there some way we could make this about a technology? This picture gives a wonderful hint. If we look at his right hand, he's holding his piece of technology, the compass. But what he didn't realize at the time is that in order to actually create a construction, you needed something to construct on. And so it's possible to think of the 5th postulate as describing the possibilities and limitations of the technology of flat surfaces. And so we've made an interesting discovery. But can we use it? Is it useful? Can this help us teach? Well, think with me for a moment about the most rigorous structure of mathematics. What is it that mathematicians do? Well, they take some postulates. And from these, they prove some theorems. Maybe some fundamental theorems. Some theorems about circles. A little theorem. A big theorem. So this mathematical space is vast, but it's also very well known and very heavily trod upon. And it can be complicated, and it can be frustrating, and it can be confusing, and it can be daunting, especially for a student who isn't very comfortable working within axiomatic systems, who's not comfortable exploring the ways that these things go together. So here's a thought. What if we clear up the space for our students? And to do that, we'd have to take away the original postulates. Not that they're unimportant, but we'd have to not let ourselves be completely restricted by them. And while we're at it, I want to take away the name axioms and postulates, because that's also confusing. What do? Let's do what Euclid did. Let's look at our technology. Let's look at the graphing calculator, something to count with, a computer, an amazing 3-dimensional geometric construction kit, some amazing programs. 3D printer. And let's give these to our students. And like Euclid, let's ask our students to explore the possibilities and limitations of these technologies. And what will they build? What will they print? And given Desmos, what amazing relationships will they come up with all on their own? And not only is this a rigorous, authentic mathematical experience that our students can be having by not following Euclid directly, but by following his methods of exploring technologies. But also, I can't think of anything more exciting and interesting than discovering the technologies around us. So what is the relationship between mathematics and technology? I hope to have started to convince you anyway that technology doesn't need to be merely a crutch or just something serving mathematics. No, in fact, technology is a fundamental mathematical object. Thank you.